All right, welcome back from spring break. I hope you guys had a wonderful, spring break, fall break. Hope you guys had a wonderful break. This is actually incorrect. Let's have your green notes packets out. We're about to start Unit 4 today. Sorry I'm not here with you. I'm at a doctor's appointment with my son, who, as I told you guys before break, broke his leg. So I will hopefully be back before the end of class. Notice you guys are going to have you're going to have 5 IXL lessons to do this week. Make sure you get them done on time because these are 6th grade lessons. So they're just going to be a little harder to find if you don't do them this week. So let's get started. So in Unit 4, we're going to begin with, it's going to be a lot of algebra. And so we're going to start with some properties and then translating expressions. So you should have this part of your packet. This is page 1 in your packet. You guys are going to be filling in the explanation in words, and then you're going to write the example. We have the algebra way of writing it, and then we're going to do a couple of examples together. If I go too fast, feel free to pause and get things written down. That's the advantage of having a video. All right, so the first property is the commutative property of addition. And it says, for all real numbers a and b, a plus b is the same as b plus a. So what can change is the order. And so 4 plus 3 is the same as 3 plus 4. And what I like to stress is this is the one with the O, so it goes commutative, and you see the O, so you know it's the order can change. The big idea is your order can change with addition. So the commutative property of addition. Commutative property for multiplication is the same. So A times B is the same as B times A. So once again, the order can change, and so 2 times 3 is the same as 3 times 2. So once again, order can change. Then we hit the associative property for addition. And I don't know why, but sometimes we like to say that it's the grouping, but I don't know, I like to just think of 2 parentheses right there. But anyway, the grouping can change. So as you can see, who you associate with are your friends. And so here, A and B are friends, and now B and C are friends. And so you can see the grouping has changed. Notice the order A, B, C is still the same, A, B, C. What has changed is the grouping. And so here's our example. And on the left-hand side, you have 3 and 4 grouped, then you add 5. And on the right side, you have 4 and 5 grouped, and then you add 3. And you can see if you do the math following order of operations, you will get the same result. So that's the associative property for addition. There is also the associative property for multiplication, meaning you can also change your groups with multiplication. And so in this case, if we look, we have on the left, we have 2 times 3, then times 4. And on the right, we have the 2 times the quantity of 3 times 4. So you would multiply the 3 and the 4 first. And so you can see on the left, you'd end up with 6 times 4, which is 24. And on the right, you have 2 times 12, which is also 24. So those are our first 2, commutative and associative property, both of which have 2. Identity property, I like to think of identical twins. So think of identical, meaning you get the identical thing you start with. So if you're adding the addition property, identity property of addition, if you add 0 to anything, you get what you started with. And so you get the identical thing you start with. And so, for example, no matter what you add, 10 plus 0 is going to be 10. So anything plus 0 is the identical thing you started with. So the identity property for addition. There is also an identity property for multiplication. So you got to be careful with the identity property for addition. It is not the 0 property. You add 0 to get what you start with. The identity property for multiplication is if you multiply anything times 1, you get the identical thing you start with. And so, once again, anything times 1. So negative 5 times 1 would be negative 5. A million times 1 is a million. So anything times 1 is what you start with. And so that's the identity property for multiplication. The multiplication property of negative 1, just like if you multiply by 1, you get exactly what you start with. And the only difference is if you multiply by negative 1, you're going to get the opposite of what you start with. So what was positive would become negative, and what was negative would become positive. So 3 times negative 1 would give you negative 3. So the opposite of 3 is negative 3. If I started with negative 3 times negative 1, I would get positive 3. And so you'd get the opposite of what you start with. All right, and there's the example there. The multiplication property of 0, sometimes known as the 0 property. Anything times 0 is 0. So a times 0 is 0. Our example down here is 100 times 0 equals 0. Anything times 0 is 0. And that's the big thing with the 0 property. 0 property always is equaling 0. If you add 0, you get the identical thing you start with, which is the identity property for addition. Distributive property, we talked about this before fall break, and so this is where you multiply or pass out. We call it the pass out property. You multiply the number on the outside of the parentheses to each term on the inside. And so when we look at this one, we're bringing this a into both. And so it becomes a times b plus a times c. And if we look at our example here, we would have 2 times the quantity of a plus b. And so you'd multiply 2 times the a, and you'd multiply the 2 times the 4. And so when we simplified it, and this is what we're getting to with that algebra concept, it'd be 2a plus 8 is the simplified version after you multiply through. And so now we're going to go through and look at our 4 examples. And so which property do we see here? And so we have 4 and 98 hundredths times 1 equals 4 and 98 hundredths. And so in this case, anything times 1, you get the identical thing you start with. So this would be the identity property for multiplication, not for addition in this case. The next one, as you can see, whenever I see parentheses, I don't automatically assume associative. What I want to look at is, one, I like to always look at order. So we have 7, 3, 9, 7, 3, 9. So you can hear that the order has not changed. What has changed is our grouping. So we have 7 times 3. And then we have 3 times 9 grouped. And so this one would be our associative property because the grouping has changed. So always check, did the order change or did the grouping change? Just because there's parentheses doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be associative. Okay, in this case, you have 589 times 7, and then 7 times 589. And so you can hear, as I read that to you, that the order has changed. And remember, once again, that I like to just see that O for order in there. So that's a commutative property, and this would be the commutative property of multiplication to be exact. And this last one, we have negative 19 and 1/10 plus 0 equals negative 19 and 1/10. And so you get the identical thing you start with. Now, it is not the 0 property because anything times 0 is 0. This one, you get the identical thing you start with, so it would be the identity property for addition. All right, so those are our properties, and you guys are going to do a worksheet on that, practicing those in a moment. But before we get to that, we're going to jump to evaluate or algebraic expressions, which we've already talked a little bit about. So variables, once again, is a symbol that represents one or more numbers, normally a letter. We can use examples like X, Y, and Z. We normally use lowercase letters unless it's specifically meant to be a capital. Algebraic expressions are mathematical phrase. Once again, an expression does not have an equal sign, okay? But it's a mathematical phrase with at least one variable. That's why it's algebraic expression. And there's some examples there. 13 minus g, 3x plus 4. Notice there's no equal signs. What does the word is mean in math? Well, that is equal to. I would assume that it was supposed to be coming up. So is means equal to. And so you're not going to see it, is in this case today because we're going to be dealing with expressions. All right, so then first, after we've done those little vocab in class, I'm going to have you guys take a few moments and you're going to write down words that mean addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. So at this point, pause for a minute and see if you guys can write down a few before we go over a few. Okay, so what words mean addition? What words mean subtraction? What words mean multiplication? What words would indicate division? When you're looking in a word, in a maybe in a story problem, for example. And so take a minute and look at those. All right. Now, this page is actually found in your packet, but I want you guys to go ahead and write some of these. So now that you've taken a few minutes, but here are some words that hopefully you came up with. This is not the perfect list, but I like the examples here. So words that mean addition, obviously plus, sometimes and, total of, altogether, increased by, combined, add. This is one that you definitely need to know. Sum, that is the answer to an addition question. Together, more than, added to, in all, make. All right, subtraction, subtract, take away, gave, decreased by, fewer, minus, shared, fewer than, less than. I'm going to star those, and also difference. Okay, so difference and less. Now, when you hear fewer than and less than, these are really important. Put a star next to those two. You need to switch the order. Okay, so for in a moment when we kind of go and say something like, if I said 8 fewer than 10, it would not mean 8 minus 10. It would be 10 minus 8. Okay, and so those are the ones that matter the most, because if you put them in the incorrect order when you do the math, it's going to be an incorrect answer. So when you hear fewer than, less than, you do need to change the order. Okay, other words that mean multiplication: times, triple would be times 3, double means times 2. Product are the important ones. These are the answer to questions: difference, sum, product. Okay, multiplied by, of means multiplication, increased by a factor, twice means times 2, multiple. Okay, quotient is the answer to a division question. Per, ratio of, divided by. Half is the same as dividing by 2. Divisor, dividend, split up, split evenly, divided into. Those words, there's not as many multiplication division words as there are addition and subtraction. Okay, so today what you're going to do is you're going to just take, and here are some other words that are also good ones. When you guys hear equals, is, are, were, was, will be, yields, and sold for. Parenthesis words, you guys are going to hear this, and this is kind of important when you guys are doing your IXL lessons, especially next week, I think. If you guys hear the quantity of, or twice the sum of, or times the sum of, or twice the difference of, or plus the difference of, that means when you hear that plus the difference of, you should be doing that group first, and then do whatever they're asking. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to write some phrases. We're going to write the algebraic expression for each word phrase. So in this case, we have the temperature is T is increased by 5. Well, when I hear increased, I think plus, and so when we write this, the expression would be T plus 5. You don't need the arrow in there. You guys would write T plus 5, and that's it. 5 cats fewer than C cats. All right, now this is that fewer than, and when I hear that fewer than, that means subtraction, but I need to change the order. And what it's saying is I actually start with C cats and I'm taking away 5. So when I write this one, it has to be written as C minus 5. Has to be written that way, otherwise it would be incorrect. Okay, you can't change the order with subtraction. You can change the order with addition, and so, for example, in A, if I had 5 plus T, IXL would still count it correct. But on B, if I flipped it around and I left it as 5 minus C, it would be incorrect. All right, the product of 5 and N nickels. Well, that's product means multiplication, so it'd be 5 dot N. We're going to avoid, do not use the X. Okay, we do not want to use X, and actually this is the one we want. I don't even want to see that equal sign in there anywhere. It shouldn't be. But when we have multiplication, we always put the coefficient first. And so even if the 5 appears second, it should be rewritten as 5n, because the commutative property, you can always change the order, and the coefficient always comes first. The number always comes before the variable. All right, dinner of D dollars divided amongst 5 friends. Well, division, we are avoiding this symbol. I don't want to see equal signs in these. So you could write it as, yes, D divided by 5, but we're going to avoid that. You're going to become good algebra students, and we want to write it this way. And in this case, it's the top is divided by the bottom. And so D divided by 5, we write it as a fraction, just like that. And then we're just going to go through a few examples. Now, here your goal when you guys are writing these is to try to write a few different versions. So if I gave you guys X plus 2, all right, you will use, instead of saying X, you're going to say a number X. And then you can come up with a bunch of different variations. So words that mean addition would be plus or increased by 2, a number X plus 2. You could do it as basic as possible. You can read it. If you can read it, you can write it. Okay, this one too, more than. When you hear that more than, once again, you change the order, a number X. The sum of a number X and 2 is always a good one. So try to write different versions in your homework as you go through these. The next one was P over 3, or the correct way would say, well, you can go to the basic, P divided, a number P divided by 3. So that's a very easy one. Or the quotient of a number P and 3. Order matters in this case, so you would need to say P first, or a number P, then the 3 second. This next one, lots of different options. You have a number C minus 50. That's the quickest, easiest. You could have 50 less than, once again, that less than, a number C, where you change the order when you hear less than. We could do the difference of a number C and 50, and we could have 50 subtracted from a number C. So there's all sorts of, and there's actually other ones you guys can use from that list that we had a previous page, okay, which is also later on in your packet. I don't know what page number in your packet, but if you guys look in your packet, that picture of all those symbols is actually in your packet. 9y would be a number, or 9 times a number y. You could have the product of 9 and a number y, and I believe there's others that you could kind of come up with, but that's pretty much it in regards to multiplication. A number 9 multiplied by a number y. So those are some options that you can have. And once again, you just guys are going to have to write down one, and then as you go, try to use different ones instead of the same thing every time as you write some of your homework problems. Okay, so your homework is actually the next page in your packet. It is page 3, which is the properties. I think there's like 12 of them. And then the page 4, which is writing algebraic expressions in word form and in algebraic expression form. And then there are your 5 IXL lessons. And once again, those IXL lessons are lessons that are found under 6th grade math. They are basically very similar, if not the same, as the ones we did before break, but we felt like this would be a good review of Unit 3 as we head into Unit 4, because you're going to need to use these as we start solving equations next week. So once again, hope you had a great day, and get this assignment finished. This one's due on Wednesday. Have a good day.